Since we're nearing the end of August and the start of the 2022 NFL season, I thought it was time for one more version of my Dynasty spin on Guy Fieri's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives to scour through the ugly parts of Dynasty ADP and find those hidden gems among the muck. So welcome in to episode 5 of Dynasty Fallers, Fill-Ins, and Flyers. First up, we have our faller, who was once valued as a top 50 overall asset in one quarterback leagues less than 3 years ago to now barely being inside the top 200, and that's new Jaguars tight end Evan Engram. I get it. His best season was his rookie season back in 2017, and he hasn't really come close to repeating that for fantasy. He's had injury problems, drop problems, quarterback coaching, offense problems, and because of all of that, he should be valued low in Dynasty, but I think we've gone just a little bit too far. Engram signed a one-year, $9 million deal with the Jaguars as a key part of their efforts to bolster their offense and support Trevor Lawrence, and that's pretty significant cash for a player who also comes in as probably the third most talented weapon on offense behind Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne. Marvin Jones is fine, but he's aging out. Zay Jones and Laviska Shenault are, well, Zay Jones and Laviska Shenault, so it's highly likely that just naturally that Evan Engram is the second or third option on the team in targets, not even mentioning Doug Peterson's affinity for targeting the tight end position in his offenses. I actually made this exact argument before free agency in favor of then Dan Arnold as a sleeper if he survived free agent signings and the draft. He didn't, but that same argument works for Evan Engram now. Weeks 5 through 10, however, his targets were 8, 5, 10, 7, 8, which is 38 targets over a 5-game span or 130 over 17 games. He was a great PPR tight end. He scored double-digit fantasy points in 4 out of those 5 games without even scoring a touchdown. So we saw him be heavily targeted as the starting tight end last year, but now pair that with new head coach Doug Peterson and his affinity for targeting the tight end position for basically a decade, dating all the way back to Travis Kelce with the Chiefs and more recently Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert with the Philadelphia Eagles. Since 2016, Peterson has averaged between 10 to 15 targets to the tight end position per game. That was with a less athletic Zach Ertz by himself and then a less athletic Zach Ertz with a way more athletic Dallas Goedert since 2018. So if that's the potential upside of Evan Engram in the Jaguars offense, the fact that he's currently tight end 21 in August ADP makes him a value at the position. He's currently going slightly ahead of Brevin Jordan and Isaiah Likely and just behind Gerald Everett, Hunter Henry, and Trey McBride. I've also mentioned in other videos that I'm not a Mike Gesicki guy, I'm not a Dawson Knox guy, so being able to flip one of them for Evan Engram plus would be something that I would love to do. In the DLF Trade Finder, we see moves like Tyler Higbee for Evan Engram, Antonio Gibson and Rashad Bateman for Michael Pittman and Evan Engram, Engram for Chris Evans and a third, and then whatever the heck this Rojo deal is. But the point is that he should be pretty cheap to acquire, and I would be buying now, even if I was a contender for the production or a rebuilder for the value spike that you could probably have and then be able to flip in season. So go out and get yourself some Evan Engram. Next up is our fill-in, who could honestly end up as more than a fill-in throughout the year, but it's Eagles running back Kenneth Gainwell. And statistically, Gainwell had a rough rookie season, totaling 550 yards on only 100 touches, playing as essentially the RB3 behind Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, and even to an extent, even Jordan Howard at points throughout the season. However, Gainwell did score 6 times on that limited volume and was the primary receiving back, leading the Eagles in every single receiving category among running backs and almost totaling better numbers than the other 3 backs combined. I've been an adamant opposer to Miles Sanders for this year and for Dynasty this entire summer, and Gainwell is one of the big reasons for that. He's a way better receiver than Miles Sanders, was more efficient in the red zone and at the goal line last year, and for Dynasty purposes, is both younger and has a higher probability of being on the team next year if Sanders doesn't get re-signed. Not to mention the fact that Sanders is currently dealing with a hamstring injury, which he's expected to be back by week 1, but we know how these August hamstring injuries can be all season long. Now, Gainwell still has to beat out Boston Scott for the lead backup role, but I don't really see that as a challenge based on their performances in the preseason so far. It's just Gainwell has just looked so much better this entire preseason. So once he passes Scott, Sanders is the only one left to beat, and based on Sanders' injury history, we could have a handful of games this year where Gainwell is the primary guy, and even when both of them are healthy and on the field, Gainwell has the receiving upside to make him a better fantasy asset for us. I would be willing to send a future 2023 or 2024 second round pick for Kenneth Gainwell, and I would send a lot of the players drafted in the second round this year for Kenneth Gainwell, like Alec Pierce, Samir White. I think I would still take Gainwell over Brian Robinson at this point, and maybe you could even flip Isaiah Pacheco for Gainwell and capitalize on that hype. And if you have a semi-roster clogging receiver, guys like Rondale Moore, DJ Chark, Mecole Hardman, or Marquez Valdez-Scantling, these are all guys in Gainwell's ADP range right now that you could take advantage of and make deals for to get Gainwell on your roster before he potentially takes us over as the Eagles starting running back. Then lastly, we have our flyer, who might even be on your waiver wires right now, and that's Steelers undrafted rookie running back Jaylen Warren, who has actually found his way not only to a roster spot on the team, but as the primary backup to Najee Harris. We know the volume that the Steelers running back gets whenever they're starting, and we know that that volume will trickle down if the starter gets hurt. I mean, when Le'Veon was out, it was D'Angelo Williams. When Le'Veon was out again, it was James Conner. And then when Conner was out, even Benny Snell was the guy and had multiple games with 16 plus touches in 2019 and 2020, finishing as a top 24 back in 5 of those 8 games. The backup running back in Pittsburgh is a coveted role to have in fantasy if we know who the guy is, and it seems like we do right now, and it's Jaylen Warren. He's been practicing ahead of Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland recently in practices. He ran with the ones in the last preseason game against Jacksonville and looked noticeably better than Benny Snell in all facets of the game. And to add even more fuel to the fire, he has the highest preseason avoided tackle rate among rookie running backs so far, and it's not even close. So right after this video, go out, check your waiver wire for Jaylen Warren, and pick him up immediately if he's available. And if somebody already grabbed him, try to make a trade that doesn't involve Warren, then just throw Warren in last minute as a complete throw-in. And if you can, trade Fab. If you have a 5th round pick, try that. Basically what I'm saying is that he's going to be insanely cheap, and that price that you pay right now is going to be 100% worth it if you get even one game out of him this year where Najee Harris doesn't play and Warren gives you potentially an RB2 or even a really solid RB1 spot start at any point during the season. And if you want to hear some other players to acquire right now on the super cheap before the season starts, you can check out episode 4 of this series from just a few weeks ago right up here.